As Noah gives me a massage, David Ross proved that he cannot handle the big situations. Fourth game of the season, I remember calling Charlie on the phone. The Cubs were playing the Reds in Cincinnati. They got off to an early 3-0 lead. Belly hit a 3-run homer. Drew Smyly was starting the game. Now, the Reds before May, had no Matt McClain, no Ellie De La Cruz. I believe Joey Votto was still hurt. There was absolutely nothing on that team that was good. And guess what? Drew Smyly comes in, gives up 3 runs in the first inning. He's able to fight the storm. Anyways, we get to the 5th inning. The Cubs have the lead. Drew Smyly is clearly showing signs of being tired. Guess what? There's nobody up in the bullpen. This has been a repeated issue of David Ross the entire season. Starting pitcher gets tired in the 6th inning. The 5th inning. There's nobody up in the bullpen. I mean, come on. That is just basic managing 101. When your starting pitcher begins to show signs of getting tired, you cannot just stand there twiddling your thumbs, staring at an empty bullpen. I mean, I can't think of how many times I've seen this year. It's happened at least 4 or 5 times with Drew Smyly and Jameson Taillon. And towards the end of the season, when Justin Steele was starting to show signs of regression because he had reached a career innings limit, he was getting gassed down the stretch. And you know what? David Ross was pushing him 6 innings. 6 2/3. 7 innings. And for a while, it was working. But that was never sustainable. You knew Justin Steele was eventually going to show signs of being tired. I believe he threw 176 innings this year. That was over 50 more than he had ever thrown in a season. Guess what? Nobody was up in the bullpen. And by the time the lead was already gone, his reliever would be in the game. It's always been one batter too late. I believe it was Stewart. I think it was Stewart Fairchild. It happened twice against the Reds. The 4th game of the year, Smyly stays in one batter too long, 3-run homer. Against the Reds again in May, Jameson Taillon. Cubs have a lead. One batter too late, 2-run homer by Jonathan India. Just unacceptable by David Ross. I'm sorry, here's some more stats. David Ross is the Cubs manager, 262 and 284. 4 seasons. I know you can't, the last 2 years, I mean, that's really not a good, it's not a good representation of what David Ross has done just because of his teams have been so bad. But, it's just so disappointing the way he's managed this team in close games. It took him 2 months. It took him till July to figure out the bullpen. We did not know what to use. We had Brandon Hughes, Michael Rucker pitching high leverage innings. And it took him till that Brewers series in July to figure out that Mark Leiter Jr. was the 7th inning reliever. Julian Merriweather was the 8th inning reliever. And Albert Alzolay was the closer. There was a game against the Astros in May. They blew a 6-0 lead. Albert Alzolay pitched in the 5th inning of a 6-0 game. That is absolutely unacceptable. Your best reliever cannot be pitching in a 6-run game in the 5th inning. And you know what? They blew the game. And the fact that it took them 3 months to get this together, I think it just shows how they killed themselves and shot themselves in the foot. You wonder why all those relievers were tired? Because they had a mad dash from July. Their playoffs started in July. They were fighting for their lives. And the fact that this team was so mismanaged in April and May and June shows that. The fact that David Ross played Luis Torrens, Trey Mancini, Tucker Barnhart, and Miles Mastrobuoni repeatedly for 3 months. I believe they had a combined 1,000 plate appearances and had a -1 WAR. That is unacceptable from your manager. They threw away so many at-bats. Trey Mancini had so many huge at-bats this year in big situations. And you know what? He never came through. And then David Ross puts this man at first base in the London series when he's clearly shown he cannot play defense on the infield. Cubs have a 4-0 lead. This was the first turning point in the year. They would have gotten back to 500. Marcus Stroman is pitching. Routine ground ball in the hole between Trey Mancini and Nico Horner. Now, your top as a first baseman, never go for the ball. Let your second baseman field the ball because you do not want a pitcher running the cover first base. And guess what? Trey Mancini goes for the ball. So does Nico Hoerner. Trey Mancini has to rush back to the base. Nico makes a good throw, and Trey Mancini drops it. It shouldn't have been an error. They did give him an error eventually, but that's just a mental mistake. The fact that David Ross, this has been David Ross's thing the entire year. He waits way too long to make simple changes that every single fan has been screaming for months. Mike Tauchman, we wouldn't play him against lefties. All of a sudden, we can't stop playing him when he can't hit. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Mike Tauchman was phenomenal. We wouldn't play him against lefties, even though he hit better than Patrick Wisdom against lefties. That's another thing. Patrick Wisdom, why are we playing him against lefties when he has better numbers against righties? Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then when Tauchman started to suck, we put him back out there instead of PCA, who is a phenomenal defensive player. There were many games down the stretch of September where PCA would have caught a plentiful amount of balls that Mike Tauchman did not.
That series in Arizona?
You talk about the series in Arizona, Mike Tauchman just botched, say, 4 or 5 fly balls that PCA would have caught. You know, I'm exhausted right now, but when you lose 15 to 21 games to end the year, that you can't justify. Someone has to take the blame for that. You can't go 7-15 in your final 21 games. That is unacceptable. Or 22 games. That's unacceptable. And somebody needs to take the blame for that. I know Chairman Tom Ricketts said yesterday on the Marquee Network broadcast that they love David Ross. You cannot. Somebody needs to go for that. You can't just. Someone needs to take the blame for absolutely collapsing in September. I mean, some people will say this season was a success.
You said
it
this
was
morning.
A failure.
You this morning we were in the car.
I know.
You said the season was a success. So get your story straight
Listen
here,
to me.
Wyatt.
In the short run, this is obviously going to seem like a failure. All right, we are mad right now. I am ranting. I feel like, though, as we progress into the offseason, this will feel a lot better of a season, but you should not be recognized for meeting expectations. I would slightly say they kind of underachieved. This team was never going to win 75 games. They were never as bad as they were in June when they were 10 games below, but they were never as good as they were when they were 12 above. They were somewhere in the middle, which was exactly where their expectations were. And why should we celebrate a team that pretty much met expectations, should have exceeded expectations, but collapsed at the end of the year? You can't justify that. So in the short term, yes, it feels like an absolute failure. They missed the playoffs by 1 game. But in the long run, I feel like we're going to take a look back at the season and say, wow, this was one of the most just enjoyable seasons, but also one of the most miserable seasons in Cubs history.
I wouldn't say it was miserable.
I'm not going to
They weren't going to. They were like.
Well, we started the show.
last week of Chicago sports has been absolute, just bloodbath. You understand? You know how hard it is to be a fan of a Chicago sports team.
Bedard had 2 assists.
But who cares about hockey? This isn't a hockey city.
It is a hockey.
Our football team blew a 21-point lead. Our baseball team lost 5 of 6, and the White Sox are the White Sox. Like, explain to me what is to look forward to.
Hey,
the Bulls are going to be terrible
Bedard.
because nothing is enjoyable in this city. We can't have anything in Chicago that's nice in terms of sports. It is a living hell.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Let's play a little game right now.
I think we have about 2 minutes left, Noah.
Okay, let's play a little game. I'm going to name a player, and you give them your letter grade for the year. Cubs player.
Yeah, okay.
Dansby Swanson.
C. Dansby,
just say the letter.
We're running out of time, guys.
We'll go through this later in the offseason.
Just say the letter.
C.
Patrick Wisdom.
C.
Seiya Suzuki.
B+.
Stroman.
B.
Steele.
A+.
Tyone.
D+.
Smiley.
D+.
Palencia. Daniel Palencia.
C.
Mancini.
F-.
Like the take of F minus 5.
We gotta play the clip. All the pain, misery.
David Ross.
David Ross. F -.
Yeah, Jan Gomes.
A+.
Oh,
he
had
a career year.
But we didn't even mention him. He's been phenomenal.
Miguel Amaya.
Misery and suffering, they never end.